morning, ladies and gentlemen. This beautiful Monday morning here in the sweet land of TNT. Yes, the land is still sweet even though our society has its challenges. My name is Sean Michael Small. My co-host, Mr. Keaton Shah, he is unable to join me today. Not feeling well. We wish him the best. However, the show must go on. The conversations have to continue, as it were. And I do believe that at times, the conversations that we have here on Talking Point, they could get a little bit too hyperbolic. They could get a little bit too emotional, and that's not necessarily always constructive, not necessarily always useful. It's something that we see our public figures, they do with regards to how they respond when they get defensive, when they fire off the first thing that comes to their mind due to anger, nervousness, or anxiety, or unease, what have you. And it usually does not go well. Now on this show, I guess there are times when we do get riled up because certain things will get us upset, and it could be perceived as being overly emotional and not very constructive. Or at times, maybe it does just reach that point. And I do think it's something that, taking a page from Darren Leesing's book to try to focus, to emphasize a little bit more about being constructive with regards to what we say. It's fine to point out flaws and mistakes, but at some point, if all we do is just say things are bad, things are wrong, yes, maybe we go a step further saying why we think they're wrong and we detail that. But then we really need to go a step further than that and encourage everyone to go a step further than that. Not just us. Try to encourage public figures to go a step further than that. Business leaders to go a step further than that. The average citizen to go a step further than that. And perhaps, maybe then, public discourse amongst ourselves will bring about a new level of idea generation. And we might discover potential leaders who will have responsibility thrust upon them, as opposed to those who have the ambition to have authority. Now, beautiful Monday morning, as I started the show saying, the irony of these days never escapes me. It's hard not to look at the news and not have a negative outlook of the country. One of the things was with regards to Tobago Carnival. It was now 2 weekends ago. Just went this last weekend on a work trip to Tobago. Was able to see Tobago for the first time since Keaton and I went up for the THA elections. Also was the first time I had to check out the new ferries. They weren't bad. The service was professional. The logistics of it, I do wonder if it could be made more efficient, but that's a different point for another day. I was able to see Tobago, see how things were going. Last weekend, it was relatively busy, at least when compared to last year. And it wasn't necessarily, though, where it needs to be. Now, October, ironically, is not a very busy month for Tobago traditionally. When the period for foreign tourists started to shrink, and they no longer came from since the end of August, I would say. For the local market, of course, it's, I guess, the one of the months in the year when there's nothing much going on and people need a breather. There's other things for them to spend their money on, except now the THA put on Tobago Carnival. And of course, Tobago has a much different dynamic to Trinidad because the leader of the party that holds 14 out of the 15 seats in the THA is not the chief secretary. And we have seen that dynamic and discussed that dynamic on the show in previous episodes. And the political leader of the party that has 14 assemblymen decried the carnival and basically said it was a failure. That was his initial reaction. That was his knee-jerk reaction. And I disagree with that last week. And after going there and seeing a bit more for myself, not a lot, didn't have a lot of time to do a lot of exploring and sightseeing and checking in with every nook and cranny, every establishment, but just a little bit. I do want to caution Mr. Duke. He is in a very interesting position, and it seems as though he has greater aspirations. And I do wonder if the way how he's moving is going to serve him well. Because at the end of the day, from what I understand, people who went to actually participate in Tobago Carnival, they enjoyed themselves enough that they said that they wanted to go back again. This is reports I got from business owners in Tobago. And that and all is victory enough, even if the event operated as a loss. Because any venture potentially is going to make losses initially. You're going to reap the profits and the benefits if the plan is sound enough and the product or the service is sound enough and you are ready for the long term. That's just how business is. You can't expect to just make money immediately. But then also we need to understand that we're not talking about an investment group. We're talking about an executive body of government facilitating an event that now adds something to Tobago's calendar that, unlike things like Great Race and Great Fete, which still has the Achilles heel of being dependent on Trinidad and the economy of the country. So if things are bad in the country and Tobago is feeling the pinch, sources of revenue from Trinidad customers are going to dry up at the same time. But Tobago Carnival is somewhat different. It could be marketed to the diaspora, or potentially, given that it's in October, it's closer to the winter months, it could be marketed abroad, maybe potentially way down the line more successfully than Trinidad Carnival, maybe. As it grows and the reputation is built and the product is improved with each successive iteration, there's a potential for it to help the island get a different revenue stream than what it would have traditionally had at this point of time in the year, which would have just been the local market. And Mr. Duke, I believe when he made his comments, he did it too hastily and left him with very little room, because he spoke in very absolute terms. He had very little room to maneuver, and he made an assumption, or he was quick to judge, but I don't think his judgment was very sound. And I think he needs to understand the position he's in. It's a unique position, but ultimately it boils down to this. By not being a chief secretary candidate for the election that won 14-1, it doesn't matter that he's political leader. One would argue that the most important person in an election is who is going to be the executive. Usually it's the political leader. So we say people voted for Manning, or they voted for Pandey, etc., etc. Rowley or Kamala. Who the cabinet is, I don't even believe that's really put up in advance. We don't necessarily know. We just know who the prime minister is going to be. We know who the chief secretary is going to be. So that is who the people are giving judgment on or support for. They did not vote for Tracy Davidson Celestine. They voted for Farley Augustine, not Watson Duke. And now, perhaps Mr. Duke knows this, and that's why he, again, hastily said something that I don't think very wise, that if local government elections goes well for the PDP, he will pursue that and leave the THA. But I want to advise him against that course of action, because at the end of the day, if he does that, the perception of him lacking any sort of loyalty or commitment to his responsibilities, that perception will probably stay in him for the rest of his political career. At the end of the day, the ride or dies who will support him are the people in Roxborough. They support him, apparently, even now. I can't necessarily say the same for the rest of Tobago. Maybe someone could call in later and let me know. But if you abandon them to go to Trinidad, not only will the people of Tobago now potentially have to question your commitment to them, question your commitment to autonomy, if you do it in such a fashion, in the way that you said you would do it. But also the people of Trinidad will have to look at you and say, abandon them to come to us. What's to stop you from banning us to go back to them? When the winds of change blow and the tides, fall, the grass always looks green on the other side. We need to demand a bit more from our leaders. They need to be a bit more careful with how they communicate with us. Case in point, Minister of National Security, he makes an interesting statement with regards to the shooting near the school of Rose Hill. He says the actual shooting incident took place about 200 meters from the school. School administrators, Hines continued, told him in the presence of the police that they were satisfied that at no stage in that event were the children at peril for any physical harm. He accepted that the sound of gunfire was traumatizing. The problem is, Minister, you are drawing a conclusion in hindsight. The teachers of Rose Hill did not know that in the moment. The students of Rose Hill did not know that in the moment. That's why it's traumatizing. And that's not necessarily an excuse to say everything is fine. Now I get it. We're not going to just try to relocate the school, just wholesale. A knee-jerk reaction. Oh, there was a shooting 200 yards from the school. Okay, next week, that whole school is in an entirely different area. That's not practical. But when you say things like this, I understand you're not trying to make light of the situation. But this isn't helping. Because it seems as though you're discounting the seriousness of the situation. Whether you intend to or not, you're a politician. Perception is a tricky thing. On this show, the biases that I am perceived to have, it's a tricky thing. It's a balancing act. There are times when I have to account for it in order to make sure that my message is accurately brought across. And then there are times when I can't walk on eggshells just because and compromise the content of what I have to say. But in this, it sounds very defensive and it sounds very unnecessary. Because I'm not entirely sure just what you were trying to accomplish in a best case scenario. Because again, it sounds like you're discounting them. And it also, and this is the issue I have with political communication on the whole, it almost sounds as if you're not really understanding the problem or the depth of the problem, the extent, the vast scope. And this is not just limited to Minister Hines. We need to realize we can't just say, oh, that one minister, he's the problem. No. What our politicians decide to do is primarily a symptom of a greater problem. And we all have a part to play in that problem. We all have to take some of the blame for that problem. Politicians of TNT, none of them are foreigners. They're all citizens here, born here, raised here, maybe not educated here, but for the most part they are of this soil. They are no less Trinidadian or Tobagonian when compared to you or me. They are from us, as the ASP would say. We'll have him later today. When we talk about police officers and gang members, they are from our communities. So are politicians. Perhaps we need to ask ourselves, we need to maybe choose better leaders? Or maybe we should just have greater expectations for the people we choose. The irony is, some of the things we see from politicians might actually be similar to how we get young people involved in criminal activity because they don't see a way. There is no hope to clean up a system that fights against such actions. Look how long it's taken just to try to get WASA healthy. The port is not healthy. Our education system is not healthy. Our justice system and criminal and our crime system is not healthy. WASA, in some respects, it's one of the largest things, the largest single entities, has one of the largest responsibilities. But it's just one. Just one. It was supposed to have come after Petrosian. Whether you agreed with what they did with Petrosian or not. WASA was next. Years later, we're now starting to start. But there are so many other situations just like that. Now, okay, how it is done, you want to debate that, fine. But could anybody tell me that doesn't need to be done? And the ability for our politicians to fix these problems. I mean, to what extent is corruption? To what extent is the bureaucratic inertia or laziness? Our own laws and regulations and systems of government, the political landscape, it's all working against it. It's going to take a lot to unravel all of this. Where do you even start? So to some extent, I can't look at just one politician and say, well, if you just have to figure out a way to fix it all on your own. Not only will he have to work against the system, he or she, whoever this theoretical messiah figure might be, they would have to work against the system, work against the desires of the people employed in the public service, not all act in bad faith, not all act in good faith. And then there are this theoretical politicians' peers, those who are a bad influence. I'm sure there are good politicians in Parliament who are more or less suppressed by the situation because a nail that sticks up gets hammered right back down. Or so the saying goes. Where could we start? I'm telling politicians, a lot of what I say on this show is to be mindful of their communication. Okay, they want to have a certain style, they want to present a certain persona. That's nice. Then they get vexed when the media, various stakeholders like chambers of businesses and industry and commerce, economists, academics, business leaders, religious leaders, community leaders, not the gang leaders. When various voices tell them, hey, this is not good, this is no bueno, try something else. Why are you defensive? But that's them. What about us? Think about it. We complain about our politicians and expect them to fix the problems, but we're complaining about them. If our complaints are fair, why are we expecting them to fix things? There's more to this, but I do have one suggestion, I think, of where we could start. And I'll get into that after the break. Sure, Michael Small here, Monday morning on Talking Point. The beginning of a new week. I hope this week is better than the last three. But we are yet to see. Let's take a break. We'll be right back. And then I'll get into where I think we should start.
FanZone, your reliable, authentic supplier, has just gotten better. You can now visit our website www.fanzonett.com for your authentic wear and collectibles. The only place where you can use both your Visa debit and credit cards. Visit our website, fanzonett.com, to make your purchase today.
Here's your chance to win a brand new Mazda CX-30, courtesy Movietown. Simply spend $200 or more at dbesttoys.com, Movietown, Port of Spain. Promotion ends November 12th.
Visit the store, you better shop online. You better call us now, I'm telling you why. dbesttoys.com is Movietown, Port of Spain. Hey!
Every word, every line, every paragraph depicts a real moment in someone's life. A father, a sister, a mother, a brother. We at Newsday are dedicated to you, the people, and through independent, unwavering journalism, strive to always bring your stories to life. Because your stories are more than just words. Newsday, independent and credible.
The issue, the continued rise in the price of flour and its impact on the cost of living in Trinidad and Tobago. How should we go about it? I want to ask you what has been revealed to you about the state of vulnerability in the country because of this exercise and because of what we're going through. Is the government losing the war on the vaccine front?
The discussion should revolve around the common good for the greatest number of people in Trinidad and Tobago.
How do we inculcate a sense of respect and regard for people who may not be of your own political ilk or persuasion?
The communities are now being used by political opportunists. So
when the tables are turned, it's the same way. Okay, this has been 10 questions. I'm Andy Johnson, and we'll see you next time.
Inspire, motivate, encourage, hope. It's about topical issues. It's about everything that you would want to know about hope, about life. At the end, you're going to say, yes, if he can do it, I can do it too. If she can, I can do it too.
No matter what they say, living in victory every day.
Nicole Lawson Live, living in victory every day. Every Sunday at 8 p.m. and Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. on WESN.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing on it.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Ball?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the white and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. And I promise that I will basically say where I think we should start with trying to change the trajectory of how things are going. And at the end of the day, a lot of our problems, I believe, are interconnected, right? With regards to the corruption and the lack of quality performance from a lot of areas of our public sector, and how it affects our private sector, our labor market situation, our education situation, our economic situation. Those things then lead into increasing crime and our criminal activity. And it's all one big feedback loop. One area feeds into another that feeds back into the point of origin. So it keeps growing. Slowly in some cases, quickly in others potentially. We don't necessarily have all the statistics in our country to know. But growing it is. The proof is in the fact that the murder rate steadily has increased over the last 10 or so years, not counting for 1 year of COVID. And where do we begin? There are a lot of things that we could potentially start with. But there is the theory of one person, Margaret Wade, an entrepreneur who I believe is working, I believe she lives in San Francisco, North America right now, but she is someone born from Senegal, Africa, and was educated in France. She's an entrepreneur, CEO of skiniskin.com, a lip balm manufacturer out of Senegal, as well as a motivational speaker, and someone who works with various African countries with regards to trying to get their economic situation improved or on track for improvement. And I have a couple of clips from Ms. Wade. Here's the first one where she points out to what she believes is one of the biggest or most important thing for nations, perhaps similar to those in our region.
What these countries have understood is that economic freedom is at the center for prosperity building. Rwanda, for example, Paul Kagame, the president of Rwanda, is explicit about it. He said he wants to be the Lee Kuan Yew he wants to be the Singapore of Africa, and Lee Kuan Yew is his model. Now, the dirty mouths are going to start shouting, oh yeah, see, authoritarian, blah, 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 whatever. Me, I want to talk only about on the economic side. If you take Lee Kuan Yew and Singapore as your example, then it means that, like him, you're going to have to be serious about economic freedom. And that's exactly what he did. That's what Singapore did. When Singapore figured that out, they went on to put in the right reforms to make their environment some of the most business-friendly environments in the world, one of the most free markets environment in the world, and you saw the magic of Singapore. Today, Singapore is richer than its ex-colonizer, Great Britain. So when I hear people telling me today, oh, Africa is poor because of colonization, I'm like, please, let's move on from that. Does it have maybe a tiny percentage in where we are today? Maybe, and I don't know. But I know it's not the cause. Because if it were, many countless countries have been colonized before. And by the way, colonizing one another is humanity's history. It just happened that maybe Africa has been one of the last, colonized region in the world. So in our psyche, it is there, and it acts like nothing happened before to others. But flash news, it's the history of the world. We've been capturing each other back and forth, all of that. So anyway, but the truth is, Singapore, richer than Great Britain today. And then Hong Kong happened. And then because Hong Kong happened, China even today happened. Because China's like, wait a minute, what went on over there? And then China went on to do the exact same thing with its SEZs, the special economic zones, some of the most free market zones in the world. And then look at it happen in communist China, who, when it comes to economics, decided that we're going to do the free market, we're going to be capitalist, because that's the only way. We tried everything else. We killed hundreds of millions of people, and we have nothing to show for it. But now that we're tired of being disrespected members of society, because guess what? That's the other thing too. You want to be respected in this world? You're going to have to be among the prosperous ones for other reasons. Would it be nice, G, that we respect people just because? Absolutely. But that's really not the world we live in. So when China got tired of being disrespected, they're like, maybe we got to build also some prosperity here, because then they're going to hear us. And today, China, being one of the, being where it is at, even Hollywood, who tries to tell the world how to think, is being told by China what movies to make and how to tweak stories and history in order to be palatable for them. You see the power that comes with being prosperous.
Ease of doing business, I believe, is the local catchphrase when she says economic freedom. The ability for us to get businesses off the ground running. No muss, no fuss. Because businesses, new businesses, already are so far behind the curve the potential for them to fail before they even start to get profits. It's just, that's one of the risks that all entrepreneurs have to take. And in this country now, it's questionable. There's so many obstacles just from the bureaucracy. And some of it, it's not as though somebody had this evil, maniacal scheme to say, hey, we're going to make things difficult just because. We have laws we need to update. We need a public service that we need to be based more on merit than on tenure. The fact that it's bloated, the fact that there's nepotism with regards to getting jobs from not just politicians on top, but at mid-level, bureaucrats at the bottom rung, what have you. All of these things need to be cleaned up, and it's not going to be easy. But this is one area to start, because while governments in TNT try to create jobs by bloating the public sector, the private sector creating jobs is what's actually sustainable. And then by giving us economic freedom, more people have opportunities to go in business for themselves and for those businesses to be successful in the long term. But it's not going to be easy. So we have another clip from that discussion that Ms. Wade had, where she goes on with some examples of her experiences now trying to undertake this endeavor to open up economic freedom in our country. Let's get the second clip.
One of the hats that I wear is as the director for the African Center for Prosperity of the Atlas Network, the largest organization in the world of free market think tanks around the world. And so what we do there is we work on reforms around the world to take down barriers of entry for local entrepreneurs. So that's one thing. But as we all know, that's a great initiative to take, and we've been making some really good advances in many countries, especially in Ghana. We've been making a lot of progress with our partners there, Imani. But that is piecemeal legislation. It takes forever. It is hard as heck. And by the time you made a gain here, you made 20 losses over there, and it's an continuous problem. But until we get better, we got to continue at it. So that's one thing we've been doing. And so that's a hat I wear, working with free market think tanks to try to make it easier for local entrepreneurs to join in the party. Additionally, I'm going bold. I'm going radical. For the past few years, we've been advocating an idea for Africa that found some of its roots in Latin America, a movement called the Charter Cities. Paul Romer calls it like that. He's a Nobel laureate in economics. Others call it the Free Cities. I like to call it the Startup Cities. Most of the poor, most of the low-income nations, so meaning back in the days, the way we used to call it is poor nations, they have regulations for poverty. They're basically regulated for poverty, meaning the laws, the set of law, poverty. It only calls poverty. And so what some of these folks have thought about, looking at the Dubai example, Dubai just recently entered the top 10 of international financial centers of the world. And what Dubai did at some point is think about it and be like, on this bare, plot of sand that's technically worth nothing right now as is, this 110 acres of land, sand everywhere. They're like, well, maybe Sharia law is not the best for business. We got to think about better set of laws for business. We're talking only about business, not family law, not anything else but business. And they decided there's got to be something better. And so they looked around, and that's actually when, to take one of the terms you used earlier, they're starting to realize, common law is actually a better way for business, specifically British common law. So common law is so much better for bottom-up approaches, and we all know that markets work better in a bottom-up approach. And also, when they have to educate the law and resolve a dispute, they're going to be much more respectful to the contract that was passed between the two parties than, say, civil law would be. Right? Mm-hmm. And so anyway, so from this standpoint here, you have Dubai who is now trying to put all of this together, and eventually they put a set of laws together that would now be conducive to being a top international financial center in the world. And voila, in less than a generation, in less than 25 years, Dubai completely unrecognizable.
Now, Dubai is only 35 square kilometers. TNT, I believe combined is 5,128 square kilometers. And we already have English common law. Perhaps the issue is we don't necessarily have updated English common law. We have what we got when we became independent, and then we made our own adjustments to suit. Some, of course, for better, because our circumstances are different. Some potentially for worse. But I think the worst might not really be that large. More importantly, might be that we might not have just updated things that other jurisdictions using English common law might have already updated. But we have the foundation. Could it be that it should not be hard for us to improve the ease of doing business? Of course, the irony is, it goes back to what I said earlier. A lot of these things are caused and are fed due to other problems. The port being inefficient, for one of them, makes it hard because we have to import so much of what we consume. Therefore, retailers are importing these things. That impacts their ability for their business to operate, to function. And there are many other examples. So there are a lot of philosophies that needs to be looked at with regards to what can we manufacture, what do we think about local manufacturing, what do we think about local production, financing, etc. I will just say this to close. We had oil and gas, we blew it. I think it's fair to say. Guyana now has oil and gas, and they have a Korean trade delegation just went in last week to visit Guyana. Korean investors are ready to finance and develop Guyana's first smart city, among other projects. Business, they want to make it easier. Digital transformation, we're behind on that. Korea, they're pretty good at that. And if they take what they know about IT infrastructure and communications technology to Guyana, this might just be one more area where we will be left behind. And what are we going to do then to try to compensate? Because more and more, we're not just competing with one or two countries, we're competing with the world. How are we going to even compete with the world if we could barely keep up with our neighbors? Let's take a break. When we come back, we'll get more into the crime situation. It's the shadow that looms over our heads every day, whether we want to admit it or not. No matter how bright the sun is shining, just for you, that cloud still is waiting in the wings. This is Talking Point. Sean Michael Small. We're right back.
People really want to know, what about me? Where do I fit?
Yes.
What is in the ride for me in terms of a better Trinidad and Tobago? And I'm pleased to shed some light on that.
The purpose of bail is to ensure your attendance at court. That's it. It is not punitive. It is not rehabilitative.
We, the police officers, we are professional, and we are here for whenever the survivor is ready to come forward.
We have the right to private and family life, the right to religious freedoms and beliefs and thoughts and expression. But these rights are not absolute. Certain rights can be limited.
The law is to govern the whole. It's for all of us in public.
Join me, Sule A. Joseph, as I delve into the day-to-day psychological issues plaguing our society. We will discuss behaviors that encompass the biological influences, social pressures, and environmental factors that affect how you think, act, and feel. Sight, Thursdays at 11:30 a.m., only on WESN, Content Capital.
With society plagued by a host of issues, with debates surrounding our urgent concerns falling short, with questions of our future not always being answered.
The conversation continues. Join me, Kemuel Pascal, as the voice of the youth comes to life. We will confront the controversial topics of today's world to gain answers that are key for a better tomorrow. One and One with me, Kemuel Pascal, Wednesdays at 10 a.m. only on WESN, Content Capital.
today we have with us a special guest. He's an NHS physician.
In the United Kingdom, where 70% of the population is fully vaccinated, we've sort of had a chance to experience what normal life is like all over again. If you can trust the medical fraternity to treat you once you have COVID and you come into the hospital, and you trust whatever medication we're giving you at that point, why don't you trust us when we're telling you to take the vaccine?
Healing Queens is a dance company which we do heels dancing, which is a fusion between jazz technique and burlesque styles.
What's up, Doc? Tuesdays and Thursdays here on WESN, Content Capital.
Let your voice be heard. Call Madam Fix-It on WESN, the only place that effectively helps you with your woes. Having problems getting onto government agencies, water woes, NIS and pension problems, potholes, and much, much more. Call me, Madam Fix-It, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, right here on WESN. Let me fix it for you.
AM Prime on WESN, the only place from 6 to 7:30 a.m. where you can get the most analytical and thorough interviews and regional reports.
The Barbados Labour Party, led by the Prime Minister Mia Motley, once again able to achieve a clean sweep in yesterday's general election.
I think a lot of people have underestimated the power of Tobago nationalism.
If the government is afraid to say it, I, Martin George, I am saying it this morning on your show, Andy. There will be no carnival before Ash Wednesday.
Grab a cup of coffee and start your day right watching AM Prime with Andy Johnson weekdays from 6 a.m. Only on your content capital, WESN.
Living in victory every day.
Inspire, motivate, encourage, hope. It's about topical issues. It's about everything that you would want to know about hope, about life. At the end, you're going to say, yes, if he can do it, I can do it too. If she can, I can do it too.
No matter what they say, living in victory every day.
Nicole Lawson Live, living in victory every day. Every Sunday at 8 p.m. and Wednesday at 4:30 p.m. on WESN.
Is it politics? What is it? Is it that nobody cares about sports?
The kind of support that sport used to get in the past is no longer here.
The thing is, taking a knee doesn't mean that that's the only thing you're doing now, Andy.
Right.
Taking a knee along with other stuff.
Samantha, what are you looking forward to when you return home to Trinidad and Tobago after winning the title?
Thank you very much for speaking it into existence.
Is it no pressure on Nicholas Paul?
It makes me more motivated to work hard and to go out there and rep the red, white, and black.
Why are we sending a team to the Winter Olympics?
There are a number of Trinbagonians who are in the diaspora and have grown up in winter sport. It's an opportunity that the Trinidad and Tobago Olympic Committee will not close the door on.
I also believe in the players that we have. Once you can motivate the players, you can get the best out of them.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, crime is an ever-growing concern. It already was a large concern, but now we've reached the point where, well, I'll be honest, I myself am I'm not panicking, but the fear of the situation getting out of control at a level never before seen is making me very wary to have further conversations on the matter. I have with me, of course, Acting ASP Ashraf Ali. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Sean. It's a pleasure. It's always a pleasure to be here again. All right.
Yes, and I understand what many of the persons are saying right now, and your sentiment, that a lot of persons are still not feeling safe. In a lot of different circumstances, not feeling safe. This morning, we want to treat with the issue of domestic violence. And I just want to say a heartfelt condolence to the family and friends of both Mr. Bostic and Mr. Mohammed. At the end of the day, 2 lives was lost.
Yes.
Right? So the investigation will be conducted, but at the end of the day, 2 lives are lost. The whole issue that we are trying to reinforce this morning, as the commissioner in his interview over the weekend, is the issue of domestic violence that we are still missing, and that is actually alive in Trinidad and Tobago. And only when situations of this nature, domestic violence rears ugly head again, then we have the conversation about domestic violence. And we keep on doing it as soon as these situations. I'm not getting into the issue of firearms or all those issues with firearms. Those are concerns for us. Like I said, and like I was having a discussion with you, that guns don't kill people. People kill people with tools. Firearm is a tool that is used. And in this unfortunate situation, the individual had a firearm.
Yeah.
And he committed an offense with the firearm.
I think that is something, my personal philosophy is, look, if you don't have access to a gun, you could still commit a murder with a knife. You could still commit a murder with a car or with a blunt instrument. And especially with domestic violence, because, okay, I will say this, obviously the robbery with regards to that we saw with Pennywise, it at the very least would not have happened in anything in any similar way if they didn't have access to firearms.
So true.
But with domestic violence is one of the areas of crime where the firearm is just a luxury. It is completely unnecessary. Especially, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a husband or boyfriend hitting the wife or girlfriend. It could work the other way. But obviously, especially in the case where, you have one partner that could physically dominate another a lot easier, then you don't need the gun. Just any blunt, heavy object in the household could potentially become a murder weapon in that case.
Exactly. And if we would use, I would use general circumstances. I don't want to narrow down on this incident per se because of the trauma the family already is going through at this point in time. But generally, we have persons in Trinidad and Tobago that are suffering at the hands of, or in circumstances or in domestic violence situations. We tend to believe that the victim is the only one that could report or make the necessary steps to alleviate your own situation. However, under the Domestic Violence Act, not only can that individual make the report, the applicant himself or the victim, any member of the household can make a report on behalf of that individual. Any family member, even a police officer can apply for what we consider to be a protection order against an individual, having knowledge that a domestic violence situation is presenting itself. So if you're in a really Domestic Violence Act, Part 2 of Section 4.1, it gives you the category of persons that can act on behalf of in this case, the victims. Now, the victims themselves, we have to understand, if family members are aware that the victim is in a domestic violence situation, they may not be able to act because of the trauma they are going through. They may be fearful of further reprisals.
So a family member doesn't have to live in the area necessary to make the report?
No, it doesn't have to.
What about a neighbor or even a tenant?
They can go and make a report on behalf of, because these are circumstances where the individual, based on what the person is going through, if you have knowledge of something is taking place, the Domestic Violence Act, they give you some opportunity too. So the member of the household of the spouse or respondent, so even the respondent who is the accused, his family member can report him.
Well, I mean, we've seen now in the past, usually family member of accused of any sort of crime would be very defensive. We've seen now where some of the criminals, their family members, have not been so defensive. So I would hope that maybe as things continue, we might get more civic-minded people like that.
But in this circumstance, we have to look at the bigger picture. Both families, now we're talking about family members, and we're talking about spouses, common law relationship, persons living in the same household together, might have extended families, where domestic violence is seen on both sides. May not be physical, but under the category of domestic violence, they have financial, they have abuse, they have a lot of different things under the category that you may identify as taking place. You can act on behalf of that person in the interest of that individual by making a report to the station. You can even go to the court and apply for a protection order on behalf of the party, because you are seeing the domestic violence and gives you the opportunity to do it. Right? So we need to understand that from that perspective, we need to be our brother's keepers. And more so, and from a family's perspective, you need to look after your family.
Now, domestic violence is a tricky thing, right? Because usually it's portrayed of, well, he's an abuser, he always was an abuser, or she's an abuser, etc. It's something that is ingrained in the perpetrator from the very beginning. But we saw with regards to the pandemic that that potentially the cases grew. And I'm wondering if this is just me now just having some concerns that similar to how gang violence and robberies increases with economic pressure and bad influences to say, well, no, you go and do it and get yours. Could domestic violence now grow from situations that maybe wasn't bad in the past, but you know, he was never a bad person or whatever, genuinely loves his wife or what have you. But then now the pressure of the economy, the frustration now, the difficulty for him to be a provider or to watch his wife or girlfriend now have to be the provider because of whatever circumstances, plus potentially bad influences. Similar to other crimes, could domestic violence, well, just come from that? And have we seen now, I know we knew with the pandemic and when people were caught, stuck together, we saw growth. As other crimes are rising, are we seeing a growth in domestic violence now in this last year?
Well, I can't say specifically, I do have the correct data to present at this point in time. That's some data we may have to look into. But from a general perspective, we have noted that persons staying together who already had some friction before the pandemic situation and that personal sharing of the personal space again can create some more conflict. Now, domestic violence has several different factors that can cause somebody to be into a domestic violence situation. From finances, from children living in a home, frustration, trying to provide, even conflicts between neighbors, how you treat neighbors, internal family conflict between this family and that family. Then we have things with land. There are a multitude of situations that can cause persons to behave or react in a certain situation, and that is very critical. We only hear about domestic violence when it reaches the ultimate fatal stages. We don't hear about the ones that are now potentials, where somebody has a potential or they start up the process and you identify it and you're saying, hey, we need to nip this in the bud early or get some counseling or some treatment for the individuals, right? When you look at what the courts, from the Court of Protection, what the court and the law states, court under Section 5 of the Domestic Violence Act, this is what the court said. The court determines on a balance of probability that domestic violence has occurred, or they may issue a protection order with prohibitions or directions. So once you make an application to the court only takes a balance of probability that a domestic violence situation may occur. That is how simple and serious the court looks at domestic violence to avoid reaching to the fatal stage. So any mitigation that can be put in place initially would try to eliminate the fatal, to reach that the fatal stage.
Is it that there's still a stigma with regards to talking about your business to outsiders? Is it that victims, that not only, I understand that they could be traumatized, but I feel as though there's also the cliche that, well, the ones who can't separate themselves from their spouse or significant other, and they don't necessarily want to get that help. If I see a family member in a situation and it seems as though they don't want to get that help, and if I make a report and they deny it, you know, what else could I do? Will the police take the denial of the victim and say, well, there's nothing to see here and move on?
The police would not. They would, because we treat all domestic violence reports seriously. We may not have evidence to support or charge an individual for domestic violence, but we take it seriously because it can escalate. We would now send you, advise those two parties to have a conversation with our gender-based violence unit officers, where expert advice and expertise will now be able to analyze underlying issues and make some recommendation for some of the institutions to have a better conversation. Because persons, like you said, they tend to believe that I don't want to worry about it. There is nothing. I don't want to tell anybody about this. But domestic violence is not only against male. We have females committing domestic violence against them, their spouses also. And even against them, the children and other family members in the household. So both parties, both males and females, in this society, we have to understand how do we treat with conflicts among the other stresses that we have.
We only have a little bit of time left. I just want to look at the other side now. There's a bit of a cliche where now vindictive partners might try to weaponize the law and the courts against the other. And you will get false allegations, particularly when there's divorce and child custody involved, and there's a very contentious separation. With regards to that, does the police have mechanisms in place to account for that? Or is it that we don't necessarily see that very often right now?
No, well, what the police will do is, based on the circumstance, they will take statements, present their findings, and make recommendations that these persons can go before the family court to get some level of mediation. Mediation maybe is the first step to iron out the situation, because it may be a situation where mediation may be able to help. If mediation is not helping, then the family court could go further and make the required, take the required actions in this circumstance. But what we are trying to reinforce, and what the commissioner was mentioning, what we're reinforcing is that we need for the persons to come forth. Unfortunately, in this situation, the most recent situation, there was absolutely no report that was made against the individual in context of domestic violence, where the person would have been aggressive or their indication. So the police had no knowledge. And sometimes this is a situation we find ourselves. When things happen in the household, it is easy to blame that the police didn't do anything about it. Yeah. But we only can treat with what we know. So, and even the family members who have knowledge need to take the appropriate step and bring it to the attention of the police or to the courts and act on behalf of, because this is something that this type of crime, it impacts a lot. It impacts.
We have to stick up in it. We have to break for news. However, there's at least one last question I want to ask, because I think this scenario, it does then lead to our next question of, just what do we do, or what could the police do when the victim does not, for whatever reason, so leading off from previous questions. Well, we could take a couple of minutes, because there were no reports, right? But then now I did ask, sometimes the victim seems reluctant. and the victim might even try to deny. Let's say there were reports and the victim is not cooperating for their own sake. What could the TTPS do then? Because I do think that it's a bit of a tricky situation for law enforcement to expect law enforcement to physically remove her when she does not want to be removed from the situation.
Well, and it's true. It's a very tricky situation. We will try our best, and I'm saying we will try our utmost best through our services, gender-based violence unit, and other social services that we have in the police service, and let some assistance to the individual to help direct. But at the end of the day, if that individual refuses to leave the household or the environment, there is not much that we can do with that.
So, but then I do believe it's still better to have these things on record, because you record the history of it in case it has to go before a judge.
Yes.
Right? But is there anything else potentially making the report could do to try to help the situation? Any other mechanisms besides that?
Well, in those circumstances, and it all depends on our situation, our circumstance, how we assess that individual, the level of trauma that the individual is facing, the level of domestic abuse, the type of domestic abuse in that environment, that a decision may have to be made even by the courts or a probation officer to take out our order, permitting or allow ironing out or laying out certain directives that the aggressor or the respondent cannot do or should not do.
Okay, well, now we have to take a break. When we return, I still have at least one more question to ask you, ASP Ali. But we break for news on the hour here at WSN. When we return, of course, not just asking him my final question, but we will open up the phone lines and hear from you, the viewer. I'm sure there's a lot you might want to ask the ASP or myself, but we'll have that when we return after this.
Is your WESN News on the Hour. I am Marquise Akers. Thanks for joining us. Here are the headlines. Griffith questions the top cop's supposed obsession with legal firearms. Opposition MP slams Hines for apparent lack of care for Rose Hill comments. Temporary change in traffic arrangement at Badarock Bell Garden. And internationally, 19 dead after Tanzanian plane crash. Now for the details. NTA leader and former Commissioner of Police Gary Griffith says that whilst every other citizen recognizes that the crime problem is becoming of illegal firearms, Acting Commissioner McDonald Jacob and his political handlers continue their obsession with legal firearms. Griffith says that the top cop is disappointingly capitalizing on the tragic circumstances a few days ago where a domestic violence murder took place, and he seems to now be using it to justify his hounding of persons who have multiple legal firearms. A complete red herring, as whether the person had one firearm or 10. If his intent was to kill, it would not have affected the act. The former commissioner added that perhaps in an attempt to shirk his responsibility, Jacob should be made to answer if his systems broke down, since the couple is reported to have gotten married this year. And part of the process instituted by Griffith was that the spouses of firearm holders must be interviewed to give approval for their spouse's firearm. Shadow Education Minister and Opposition MP Anita Haynes is slamming the National Security Minister for his apparent lack of care following his comments made on the Rose Hill shooting incident.
And why the nation is taking this issue so much to heart, it's because that could have been swept under the rug so easily. We could not have known, had it not been for our teacher taking it upon herself not only to secure the students, but to publish the information. What the minister is telling us in his Facebook post is an everyday occurrence, and the rest of the public would not have known. An everyday occurrence, midday gun violence.
Consequent to a land slippage and critical failure of a retaining wall on the seaward side of the roadway, and Urban Development, Tobago is advising motorists that the Windwater Road will be reduced to one-way traffic, heading west from Kendall to Bell Garden from today. This arrangement is necessary to restore basic functionality to this essential roadway and is expected to be completed within short order. Accordingly, all motorists attempting to access this area are asked to utilize alternative routes. In international news, a Tanzanian commercial flight operated by Precision Air crash landed in bad weather in Lake Victoria on Sunday, killing 19 people. The country's prime minister said officials believed all bodies have been recovered from the airplane. A team of doctors and security agencies have started the process of identifying the dead and notifying the families. The airline confirmed the death toll and amended the number of survivors down to 24 in an updated statement on Sunday evening. Earlier, the carrier as well as local officials had said that 26 of the 43 people on board had been rescued. Well, that's news to the hour on WESN. I am Marquis Akers. Thanks for watching.
Every day, we communicate through stories. Stories of ourselves, our challenges, our goals, our experiences, and our aspirations. Storytelling is an art that we have mastered. WESN Film Studios comprises a collaborative team of experts with extensive industry experience locally, regionally, and internationally. The ability of your business to successfully communicate with your preferred audience depends on the strength of the stories you tell. Your vision should be communicated in a high-quality, professional, and creative way. From concept to post-production, advertising to film, multi-camera productions, live events, streaming, and virtual conferencing, we are WESN Film Studio. Let your own unique voice be heard and your vision realized. Call us today at 628-5835 for your next production.
Welcome back to Talking Point, ladies and gentlemen. Of course, thanks to Marquis Akers and Denise Sinclair for news on the hour WSN. Of course, we will be opening up the phone lines, but just before that, Acting ASP Ashraf Ali is with me, and you had an interesting point with regards to firearm users' licenses, because firearms, again, that's the big ticket thing. We think if we defang the predators, they won't have any weapons to kill us with. However, with regards to domestic violence, there's something interesting with getting a firearms license.
Yes, so like we were discussing, the Firearm Act caters for certain requirements. However, the Commissioner of Police and the Office of the Commissioner of Police, the law gives that office holder the opportunity or the scope to implement certain other measures that they need to. So one of the things that we would have implemented is a physical and medical examination, psychometric test, certificate of competence that an individual who is going to get a firearm must go through. A licensed firearm instructor must certify that this person is competent to carry the weapon of his choice that he's applying for.
Right.
And what is very important, approval from the spouse or a common law relationship that you have.
Actual approval.
Approval, and that approval has to be in writing, where the investigator personally interviews you and takes a statement, or you provide a statement, not in the presence of the applicant, by themselves, indicating whether or not you are comfortable with the applicant, who may be a spouse, maybe in a common law relationship or some family member, that this is in the context of a first application, whether you are comfortable with a firearm in your house, whether you have any knowledge that this person may or may not be violent and may utilize a firearm. You have to put that in writing.
Now, you say first application, so that means if they have a license before they got together, and I assume to live in the same household, this caveat does not apply there. This only works for new applications.
Yes, so it would only work for new applications. However, if it is that you suspect or are in a domestic violence situation, and that individual is in fact the holder of FUL, when you are making a report, you must clearly indicate to the police that this individual has a firearm. Not that you want them to lose the firearm, but the fact that he has a firearm, so the police will now treat with this situation in a different manner, because if it is that this individual uses his firearm in any way contravening the application or the requirements of the FUL, the commissioner has an authority to revoke or suspend his FUL, depending on the circumstance.
And quickly, gender-based violence unit officers, they are available throughout the country?
Yes, they are available throughout the country, 24/7.
All divisions?
In all 10 divisions.
So even if there isn't one at the station, one could be made available?
Yes.
You don't have to go to some central?
No, you will get a referral, and they can refer you to the gender-based violence unit, and they will treat with your situation and take it from there.
Okay.
So the opportunity is there, the window is open. We are just asking the public and persons who are in this domestic violence situation, please open that door and come in so we can treat with this.
Well, folks, it's just one of the many complex problems that face us with the crime situation. It's not the only one, but it is different enough that we do have to treat it differently, find different solutions. With that, we open up the phone lines now. I want to hear from you, the viewer. I do think we already might have a caller on the air, do we? Good morning, Petit Valley.
Good morning, Sean.
Morning.
And good morning to Keaton, wherever you are. I wish you a speedy recovery. Sean, I don't agree with you all the time, but that is okay. Could agree to disagree. But this morning, with your sentiments about Tobago Carnival, I agree with you 100%. And I think Watson, you got to be careful with a statement and just not trying to be political, because it could damage the investment of the country.
Yes.
Because my knowledge to all my family who went and friends who went, all report to me was successful in Tobago Carnival. I didn't hear any negative support. Having said that, Sean, we always balling our economy here in Trinidad is bad, and we use that term about, we always use that term as a banged in around. People are suffering here in Trinidad.
Yes.
Sean, over the weekend I had a chance to reflect. My wife's car is PEB, right? It is less than a year. I just checked on the road recently. We reached PED. So in less than a year from PEB, we reached D. So cars is selling like hot bread. It's over 20,000 cars. I passed by Neil and Marcy Trabridge Road Friday. I observed no cars in the showroom. So on my research, they told me no cars every car sell out, and the order is coming in, is sold already. So, Sean, my question to you is, where are these people getting these money? Because they get a loan. A loan is about 6 years to pay off at approximately $3,000 a month, according to the price of the car. So, I passed on the Avenue, Sean, over the weekend. Every bar and restaurant full, movie town full, Jenny's and restaurant full. People are eating out and they're saying, Sean, that they can't buy food. So, Sean, my question this morning, I want you to, if you could help me, where are this money coming from? Is it underground economy? Is CPEP? Is it public servant? Where are this money coming from in the country? Thank you, Sean. Have a nice morning.
Well, you partially answered my question. One of my guesses, my initial assumptions would be the public sector, things like CPAP, things like that, because the money, the salaries don't stop. Private sector, some salaries have been cut. Some people have been let go. They lost their jobs over COVID. So I think there is a disparity. And now it's not the disparity between rich and poor. Now there's a disparity between those who are stable in their situation and those who are unstable. So how that affects us moving ahead, because we already see crime ballooning and going out of control. And I do believe a lot of that comes from the economic pressure. I think somebody even said, even drug dealers now, with regards to weed being decriminalized, there's less opportunity for illegal revenue, and at least in that respect. All of those things just add a little bit more pressure, a little bit of pressure for criminals to be more desperate. So there are those like bank workers, they're stable, but there are others in the private sector who are not. And the public sector, well, yes, they got paid even through COVID. We have a caller from Tobago. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Sean.
Morning. Long time.
Your guest. Yes, sir.
Morning.
It's kind of hard getting on you guys' line, so I was lucky this morning. A question for the officer or the representative of the police there. Oftentimes, we read of reports in the papers of, this person killed, that person killed, and so forth, with this drive-by and so forth. And then that's it. We hardly hear the results of the investigations. Particularly, why was that person killed? You see, because the picture that is being painted is that they're indiscriminate killings, that these gangs or persons with guns are just going around shooting people, anyone. You're standing there minding your business, you're a law-abiding citizen, and boom, someone just shoots you. That kind of fear is different than that person was involved in the life. They borrowed money from a loan shark. They got drugs from a drug dealer, didn't pay the man, and so on and so forth. But they were somehow involved in the life. That is why they were killed. We know that the 3-year-old and the 9-year-old and the 11-year-old, they are not actors in the life. We never really hear about the results of investigations. And I think that would go a long way in appeasing some of the fears that are out there, where people are just afraid to just go outside their door because they think, I will be killed next. So you're not involved in the life. So you really don't have that fear. The drive-by shooting, where people don't know really how to shoot, and an innocent person gets shot, these things happen. But when someone is literally targeted and shot, we never really hear why they're shot. And I think that will go a long way in helping the public appease some of those fears. Thank you very much.
Thank you, caller. I mean, that is an interesting question. I think I know at least some of the information might be, you can't reveal it because of the ongoing investigation, but does that account for all? Because they give us something so we could at least understand what's going on better. In a way, I wouldn't say it's exactly about transparency, but in a way it is close to transparency.
And I appreciate the context in which the caller is asking the information, which is very valuable, because it will also alleviate some fears that it is not just random activities. Now, majority of the incidents which have been investigated, the motives are still unclear because of the fact that we tend to have difficulty in getting persons to come forth and actually state why this incident took place. That is why it tends to be along we make assumptions that it's along the line of basic gang violence against each other.
I will say there was an article in one of the daily newspapers where the commissioner, he presented some results from some cases. Obviously, it's not anything close to the 500 plus that we've had, but something like that is a start that I would love to see more of. We have a call on the line from San Fernando. Good morning.
Hey, morning, Sean.
Morning.
Morning, SPLE.
Good morning, sir.
Sean, I wanted to unpack some other stuff that you talked about there, Sean, but I do have a waste opportunity with the SPLE when he comes on.
Go ahead.
SPLE, there was domestic violence is a situation where we need more social intervention. And when I say social intervention, a lot of times these incidents take place around family members, around friends that know this thing is happening. And there is no attempt in a lot of cases to get involved because a lot of people, their hands off approach, they don't want to get involved. I don't want to say, I don't want my name called and that type of thing. Sean, I have two friends, middle class people, who had a domestic violence situation, and I only found out by chance because you could not tell that he was abusing that lady. And I eventually got involved in a roundabout sort of way, and I had to, because the police can do certain things. However, that is a domestic violence is a mental condition, and I had to get involved personally with those two people. And the lady was my friend first before her husband, and I had to make her husband my friend, a better friend than her, to try to deal with this. And these are things, let me tell you, that took a toll on me because I had to involve myself every day speaking to this gentleman. He would call, sometimes he'd call me in the morning, I would call him in the evening, I would go and look for him. And it takes a lot because it is a mental illness. Because it's people feeling inferior for some sort of reason. Sometimes it's 3 or 4 or 5. It's a complex situation. So the police, and I have to praise the police for over the years having the victim support units and all those things that came into being because they have recognized that how serious this situation is. I think it is a lot more prevalent than we think in the society. I think after murders, the next thing in this society is domestic violence. But thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, caller.
Thank you.
I would like to commend you that you will use friendship as a means of intervention. I cannot imagine how difficult that must have been.
And it is, but he would have identified, and that was the key factor here, that we were reinforcing that even though in a family circle, friends, within that circle, if you identify that something is taking place, your small intervention can assist. And this intervention the caller did was commendable because he realized that he needed to take that intervention and identified that the individual needed a listening ear.
Yeah. And it was non-confrontational.
It is. It is.
We have a caller from Diego Martin. Good morning, caller.
Hi, good morning. Sean Keaton, ACP. Thank you. Well, firstly, I'm second Vice Fitzgerald Hines, so I'm not talking about that. Also, domestic violence is huge, huge, huge. There are situations right by me where no one else seems concerned except me. I'm tired of calling the police, so I'm not talking about that, but about COP, not our commissioner, but COP27, which is happening in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt. So just a bit of context and history, Sean, for people who do not know. The first of this conference was known as Earth Summit in Rio in 1992. So when people say that they do not know about climate change, that's not true, because 197 countries pledged then to reduce greenhouse gases. So world leaders were aware that this has been caused by human activity, and we are the only ones to stop it. Fast forward to Paris 2015, where everyone agreed to keep 1.5 degrees Celsius alive. However, only 24 of the 193 countries have submitted their plans to the UN. The theme this year now, they're fed up of talking, although they're going to continue to talk. So it's moving from negotiation to implementation. I just want to give you the 4 main objectives that everyone's going to be talking about. Mitigation, using technology and renewables to reduce emissions. Adaptation, how they're going to actually enact the plans. Thirdly, climate finance. Of course, richer nations have pledged $100 billion per year to assist. That hasn't really happened. Fourth, loss and damage. So far, Sweden has pledged $13 million. That's just an outline. We'll talk more during the 2 weeks. And we look forward to CARICOM's presentation and Penelope Beckers and Mr. Kumar Singh of the Ministry of Planning. They're the people responsible for this. People are always asking who deals with climate change. It's those people. So we look forward to hearing them. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. I will just say a quick caller. I do wonder with regards to what we really could do to impact climate change right now, because there were jokes made when COVID happened. Well, this is great. Less cars on the road. This is great for the environment. No. People got poor. And when people are poorer and more worried about food, they're not worried about how they heat the food and how they heat the house, or how they, and for us, for AC, right? So I wouldn't be surprised if coal becomes a more of a widespread thing, and then for environmentalism, that is technically going backwards.
Yeah, and we see the effects of climate change yearly with the type of weather patterns that we get in, and the amount of, the intensity of some of the rains.
Well, not just the flooding, but also just the heat. I do wonder, because it's so gradual, we might take it for granted, but I do wonder, the heat then compared to how much we could get this turbulent weather, the extreme nature of it, is it something that we're missing? And then now, if these flooding situations are getting worse, I think the key is, well, it's bad now, but it could get worse down the line, and are we ready to deal with it? I just don't know if there's a part of me that wonders, yes, emissions might have a part to play, but the Earth does what the Earth wants as well, and Earth existed long before us. But I'd just like to point out, though, of course, the caller did bring up the fact that some reports are not acted upon. There is that bit of a bugbear with regards to society.
And I agree, and I will acknowledge that, we do in fact have some of that issues still taking place, and it's something that we continue to work on, because every report of domestic violence, we need to treat with it in the manner that it is reported, because we cannot make an assumption that it is just a simple report. It has some significant factors, and if I want to piggyback on the last caller, a simple intervention by the police officer, having a conversation with the individual who is alleged to have committed the offense, may trigger something that, hey, you need to check yourself, or we need to get further counseling for you.
If he sees that the police are taking it seriously, then he's a bit, he has to be a bit more mindful of his behavior.
Yes.
But with that said, I started with Tobago Carnival. I'll just say this, from what I have heard, one of the key reasons why it was so successful and people want to come back next year was that people felt absolutely safe during all of the activities and the events. So that is one, at least, good thing that we could say that happened from both the TTPS as well as a part of our government working for us.
Well, that was an initiative of the current Commissioner of Police, identifying that event is a new event. Tobago have not seen have never had an event of that nature. They normally would have normal carnival activities. So putting the additional resources and sending the resources and seeking to ensure that the appropriate security apparatus was placed into Tobago to alleviate this did in fact, from all intent purposes and all reports that persons were appreciative of his safety, notwithstanding that they said a lot of police officers was there, but that was good because they felt safe to enjoy themselves. Holistically, I want to commend the persons of the people from Tobago and all the citizens who went to Tobago and all the patrons of Tobago. It could not have been a safe carnival if they did not enjoy themselves and abide by all the laws of Trinidad and Tobago, because they went there not to cause problems, but to enjoy themselves.
And to be responsibly.
And responsibly. Holistically, I would say that our people in Trinidad and Tobago know how to have a good time in a correct manner, because Carnival, they love to enjoy themselves, and they are very, very responsible in the manner in which they conduct themselves for Carnival, per se. Yes, they love to enjoy themselves on the road, but that is our Carnival. And we are hoping that Carnival 2023, we intend to have that level of security for this event, because it's going to be the first out of a pandemic, and everybody wants to go on that street.
Yes.
They want to feel the road and feel the atmosphere and get back into that Carnival feeling. So we are aware that that is going to be a very big event.
Well, folks, I mean, one piece of good news, perhaps that's enough hope. On behalf of my co-host, again, who unfortunately could not be here, he apologizes. But with that bit of hope, today could be a day to have a good day and the beginning of a great week. Just remember, together we aspire, together we can achieve. It's in our own coat of arms, right there in front of us. We just have to abide by it. My name is Sean Michael Small on behalf of ASPRLE. I'd like to thank all of the callers. We'll see you on Talking Point tomorrow morning. Goodbye.